I used to love events like this. The lights, the polished speeches, the quiet hum of deals being made behind every glass of champagne. I'd stood on stages like these, spoken into microphones, shook hands with donors, smiled at press cameras, toasted successful quarters and new partnerships. But this time was different. This time I wasn't here as the founder of Eversight or the keynote speaker. This time I was here as someone's plus one. Lawrence. The annual donor gala in San Diego had become one of the biggest art meets tech mixers on the West Coast. And this year it was bigger than ever. A sleek, modern venue on the top floor of the Halston Hotel, with panoramic views of the bay and a waiting list long enough to bruise the egos of anyone who didn't make the cut. Lauren had been glowing all night. Not glowing in the proud of us kind of way, but glowing like someone who had just slipped into the spotlight and liked the way it felt. She wore a silver silk dress, sharp heels, and that look she saved for when she knew she was being watched. We weren't really together at the bar. More like near each other. I stood slightly behind her, sipping my drink, the classic supportive husband while she played host to her new project partners. I'd lost track of the names. Her art incubator had exploded in visibility in the last 6 months, and suddenly I was meeting people she'd apparently been working with for months. People I'd never even heard her mention. And that's when Aaron Blake showed up. He was tall, of course. Expensive suit, all confidence, all charm, but in a way that felt too rehearsed. The kind of guy who practiced smirking in mirrors before meetings. He worked for Halcyon Studio, a creative tech venture that had recently signed a partnership with Lauren's nonprofit. I'd read about it in a press release months ago. She hadn't mentioned him by name then. She just said, "We're working with some really brilliant people." Aaron greeted her like they were old friends. Maybe more than friends. That hug lasted longer than it needed to. His hand brushed the small of her back. She didn't stop him. She didn't even flinch. I watched the whole thing like I was seeing a scene from someone else's life. She smiled up at him, tucked her hair behind her ear. That little move I used to think was just for me, and laughed at something he whispered. It was a full-body laugh, the kind you use when you want someone to know they're funny. When you want them to feel good for making you laugh. Then she said it. Loudly, casually, like a joke tossed into the wind. "Well, Graham isn't the type to get in the way of a little flirting. He's too decent for that." There it was. Right there in the open. The words landed like an open-handed slap in front of half the room. A few people chuckled. Not because it was funny, but because they didn't know what else to do. Awkward laughs are a kind of defense. If you laugh, you're part of the joke, not the punchline. She glanced at me, that one look, like she was checking to see if I'd break, like she wanted to know how far she could go. And in that moment I knew, this wasn't a joke. This was her way of announcing something without having to explain it later. A test, a trial balloon, a way to humiliate me under the mask of a harmless quip. "Oh, come on, Graham. You're not upset, are you?" I was just being playful. I didn't respond. I didn't throw my drink, or raise my voice, or cause a scene. That would have given her too much validation, too much ammunition. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and took off my wedding ring. I'd worn it every day for nearly 8 years. Through our first apartment, through our rise in our careers, through long nights working back to back at the same table. Through her mother's funeral. Through everything. I held it for a second, felt the weight of it, and then, without a word, I set it gently on the bar, right next to her clutch. She didn't see me do it, not at first, but someone else did. One of the assistants from her team, a girl with sharp eyeliner and an expression that said she knew too much and didn't want to be involved. She noticed. She nudged Lauren's elbow. Lauren turned, looked down, saw the ring. I stepped back from the bar. Took one last look at her, standing there with her champagne, her dress shimmering under the lights, and Aaron Blake still leaning in too close, not even trying to hide it anymore. Then I turned and walked out. The hotel lobby was crowded. I heard someone calling my name, but I didn't stop. I kept walking until the glass doors slid open and the warm San Diego air met me like a slap. It was raining, a soft, steady drizzle, rare for this city, and somehow perfectly timed. I crossed the sidewalk slowly, my shoes clicking on the concrete, each step feeling more real than the last. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message, probably from someone inside. I didn't check it. I didn't care. I stopped across the street and turned around, just once. Looked up through the wide windows of the hotel bar. Lauren was still at the counter, still holding her drink. She leaned toward Aaron again, said something low. He laughed. She smiled, that same easy, amused smile I used to get when I said something clever. Then she shrugged, as if the ring meant nothing, as if this whole moment meant nothing, like I'd never even been standing there at all. And that's when it really hit me. I wasn't a person in her story anymore. I was a prop, placeholder, a name on an invite, the guy who'd smile politely while she built her world around someone else. Someone newer, shinier, more conveniently placed in her orbit. I stood there for a while, rain soaking through my collar. I didn't feel dramatic. I didn't feel destroyed. I felt tired. Tired of pretending I didn't notice the way she'd been fading from our life. Tired of excusing the locked phone, the vague schedules, the sudden exhibitions I was never invited to. Tired of convincing myself that her silence wasn't personal, that maybe we were just busy, just stressed, just off sync. But it wasn't stress. It wasn't timing. It was choice. She chose that moment, that line, that man. And I chose to leave. Not with fireworks, not with screaming, not even with tears. Just a single, quiet act. Removing the ring that had once meant everything, and walking away before the damage could define me. I used to think that betrayal was a moment, a single act, a breaking point you could point to and say, there, that's where everything changed. But the truth is, betrayal isn't a cliff. It's a slow slope, and I had been sliding for months. Looking back now, it all seems so obvious. The subtle distance, the reshuffled calendar invites, the way Lauren started speaking in vaguer and vaguer terms, replacing details with blanket phrases like, I have an installation, or we're doing something off-site, or the ever-flexible, it's complicated. I used to know the names of every project she worked on. We'd brainstorm over breakfast, talk through setbacks while folding laundry. Our lives used to be entangled in the best possible way. Two paths woven together, not out of obligation but choice. But somewhere along the line, she stopped telling me things. It started with small omissions. She'd mention flying out to a gallery show, and I'd only find out because I saw the confirmation email pop up on our shared iPad. Or I'd notice she wasn't tagged in any photos from events she'd claimed to be at. No behind-the-scenes sh*TS, no press coverage, no team posts. I asked her about it once, gently. Hey, wasn't that opening last night? She didn't miss a beat. Just said, it got postponed, and kept scrolling through her phone. I nodded. Let it go. Because that's what trust does, right? It assumes the best. It gives the benefit of the doubt. But trust, I've learned, is only as strong as the silence it sits in. And we were building a lot of silence. The biggest shift came with the calendar. We'd always kept a shared one, a habit from our startup days. Meetings, events, even dumb reminders like, buy oat milk, or text your mom. It was just our way of keeping each other in the loop. No secrets, no surprises. Then one day, I saw an entry that read, meeting private. That word, private. It wasn't alarming by itself. I assumed maybe it was a personal appointment, a client who needed discretion, something she didn't want logged in detail. Fair enough. But then there were 2, then 5. Then half her week was marked private. I didn't ask. I told myself she was building something, that she was protecting her process. She was always saying how chaotic the art world could be, how hard it was to balance vision and pressure, especially when money was involved. So I gave her space. That was my mistake. Because space, when it's not shared, isn't room to grow. It's distance to hide. One night, about 6 weeks before the gala, she came home late 1 a.m. Late. Still in heels, smelling like hotel lobby perfume and someone else's cologne. I was on the couch half asleep, the TV playing something I wasn't watching. She came in like nothing was wrong, kissed me on the head, said, Sorry, the show ran long. I didn't even know she had a show that night. Who was there? I asked casual. She paused for half a second too long, then said, just the usual people. You wouldn't know them. Something about that line stuck with me. You wouldn't know them. Not you haven't met them. Or you didn't come. Just flat out you wouldn't know them. Like she was living in a different life entirely. One I hadn't been invited into. And that's when I started noticing other things. Her phone was always face down. Always locked. She used to text in front of me, laugh at memes, show me stuff her students or interns sent her. That stopped. Now, she'd tilt the screen away even if she was just checking the time. Calls were always answered in other rooms. Voicemail greetings were changed. Notifications silenced. Once, she forgot her purse in the car, and I went to grab it for her. The zipper was half open. Inside, I saw a small envelope with a hotel key card, the kind with a printed guest name on the sleeve. The name wasn't hers. I froze. Looked at it too long. My mind raced with explanations. Maybe it was a gift from a collaborator. Maybe she was holding it for someone else. Maybe it was nothing. I took a photo of it on my phone. Put everything back exactly as I found it. When I asked her about it later, I kept my tone light. Hey, I think someone gave you the wrong keycard. You had a name in your bag that wasn't yours. She didn't blink. Oh yeah, they mixed up the front desk stuff. I had to check in 2 people at once, and they accidentally gave me both cards. I meant to throw it out. The explanation was too fast, too prepared. But I nodded. Again. Let it go. Again. Because somewhere inside me, I didn't want it to be true. I didn't want to admit that the woman I'd built my life with, the one I celebrated milestones with, built a home with, could look me in the eye and lie. So I kept pretending. Pretending that the coldness wasn't real. That the late nights weren't late for a reason. That the distance in her eyes was just exhaustion. I'd ask her how things were going, and she'd say, fine. I'd try to plan weekends, and she'd say, I'm swamped. She stopped asking where I was. Stopped checking in. Stopped noticing when I came home late from work, which I started doing more and more, if only because the silence at home felt worse than the buzz of an empty office. Sometimes I'd test her. I'd mention grabbing drinks with an old friend, someone she didn't like. Or I'd say I was flying out for a client meeting that didn't exist. She didn't even blink. Just said, cool, and went back to whatever she was doing. She didn't ask where I was staying. She didn't ask who I was with. Because she didn't care. Because she didn't think I'd leave. Because, and this is the part that gutted me the most, she thought I was safe. Not safe like trustworthy. Safe like inert. Predictable, passive, a man who would absorb the discomfort, who'd smile and nod and stay in the background while she rewrote the story. That's why she said what she said at the gala. Graham isn't the type to get in the way of a little flirting. He's too decent for that. Too decent. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was telling a room full of people, investors, creatives, board members, friends, that I wasn't someone who demanded respect. I was someone who tolerated things. But the irony is, she was right. I was too decent. Too decent to snoop through her phone. Too decent to accuse without evidence. Too decent to confront her in front of colleagues. Until that moment. Until she pushed the joke too far, and the mask finally cracked. I didn't need her to say the words. I didn't need confessions. I didn't need to ask if Aaron Blake was just a business partner. I had seen enough. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was laughing in my face. And the moment I took off that ring and left it beside her drink, I wasn't just walking away from a gala. I was walking away from denial, from excuses, from pretending, from the version of me who thought love was about patience, even when that patience turned into silence. Because silence, when it becomes a shield, stops being kindness. It becomes complicity. And I wasn't going to be complicit anymore. I didn't go home right away. After I walked out of that gala, I drove around the city for what felt like hours. Past the quiet neighborhoods we used to walk through on Sundays. Past the taco place where we'd order the same thing every time. Past the mural downtown with the big, painted words that read, "You are exactly where you are meant to be." that used to mean something to me. Now it just felt like a joke. By the time I finally pulled into our driveway, it was close to midnight. Lauren's car wasn't there. I wasn't surprised. I sat in the car for a long while, staring at the house. The porch light was still on. The light that always used to mean, come home. I didn't want to go inside. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find, but because I already knew. What I needed now wasn't more guessing. I needed clarity. I needed finality. So I stepped out of the car, popped the trunk, and pulled out the bag I'd packed the week before. The one Lauren didn't know about. Inside it, a laptop, a power bank, a backup drive, and a device barely larger than a flash drive, the kind of tech you don't find in stores. Not unless you know someone. I'd installed it behind our bedroom dresser a week ago. I told myself it was paranoia. Told myself it was temporary. But deep down, I think I already knew I'd need it. I walked inside the house. Quiet. Everything exactly as we'd left it that morning. 2 mugs in the sink. Her heels by the door. My jacket on the couch. Only now it all felt like a stage set. I went upstairs. The bedroom door was open, but the lights were off. I stood in the doorway for a second, breathing in the silence. Then I turned on the lamp and plugged in the laptop. I launched the interface. Live feed off. Playback available. Timestamp active. I scrolled. There, 9:47 p.m. Bedroom light flicks on. Lauren walks in. Not alone. My stomach tightened. Even after everything, even after the gala, seeing it on screen, it hit harder than I expected. Aaron Blake. No suit now. Just a white shirt, sleeves rolled. Casual. Comfortable. Like he belonged here. Lauren moved through the room like a woman who'd done this before. She laughed softly, dropped her purse, kicked off her heels without breaking eye contact. I hit mute. I couldn't hear the sound. I didn't need to. The body language said everything. Her hand on his chest. His hand on her waist. The way they leaned into each other. Not like strangers testing boundaries, but like 2 people slipping back into something familiar. At one point, she paused. Looked toward the door. Maybe she remembered I lived here. Maybe she didn't care. Then the screen went dark for a few seconds. Motion sensor still recording, just no light. Just silhouettes. I watched them move. Watched her crawl into bed. Our bed. Like it was nothing. Like I'd never existed. I didn't realize I'd stopped breathing until the laptop fan kicked on and the noise startled me. I closed the laptop. Sat there. Staring at nothing. I didn't cry. Didn't throw anything. Didn't scream. I just felt cold. Not the kind of cold that comes from shock. The kind that comes from knowing you were right and wishing you weren't. I didn't go back to the bedroom that night. I didn't even step inside. Instead, I went down to the guest room, sat on the edge of the bed with the laptop next to me and stared at the wall until the sun came up. And when it did, I felt different. Not broken. Not even angry. Just done. Done making excuses. Done rationalizing. Done giving someone chances they hadn't earned. Later that morning, Lauren came home. I heard her before I saw her. Keys jingling, heels tapping across the hardwood floor. She didn't call my name. Probably assumed I wasn't there. I stayed in the guest room. Waited. Eventually, I heard her climbing the stairs. Her steps slowed at the top. Maybe she noticed the bedroom door cracked open. Maybe she saw that I wasn't asleep on the bed. Then nothing. An hour passed. Then another. She didn't come to find me. Didn't knock. Maybe she was too scared. Maybe she was already working on the next lie. Or maybe she was just waiting for me to disappear. That's when I opened my laptop again. I downloaded everything. Compressed it. Stored it on a password-locked drive. I wasn't going to confront her with it. That would have made it feel like I still needed something from her. An apology, a breakdown, a confession. But I didn't. What I needed now was leverage. And closure. So I moved through the house like a ghost, gathering pieces of what I'd built. My work files, my notes, my passwords. I erased my credentials from the main PC. I deactivated the shared access to my business drive. I packed a small duffel with a few changes of clothes. Left the rest. Let her keep the house. Let her wake up every morning and stare into a mirror surrounded by the life she thought I'd never walk away from. I left my phone on the kitchen counter. That phone had too much history. Too many texts I couldn't reread. Too many photos I didn't want to scroll past on accident. I took the backup one, the one I used for international travel. Clean slate. Clean number. By noon I was gone. No note. No speech. No drama. Just absence. That evening, while I sat at a rented desk in a quiet co-working space across town, I logged into the security dashboard one last time. Not to watch. Not to revisit. Just to close the feed. But before I did, I saw her. Lauren. Alone now. Sitting on the edge of the bed. Same bed. Same room. She wasn't crying. Wasn't pacing. She just looked tired. Like someone who couldn't quite remember where the power had shifted. She picked up her phone. Dialed. Probably me. But my old number was already disconnected. She tried again. Same result. Then she slumped back, eyes on the ceiling. And in that moment I didn't feel satisfaction. Didn't feel justice. Just distance. A distance she created. A distance I finally stepped into. People think planning for the worst means you don't believe in the best. That if you prepare an exit, you're already halfway out the door. I used to think that too, back when optimism still felt like wisdom instead of risk management. But optimism doesn't protect you. Structure does. When I founded my cybersecurity firm, I was barely 30 and already sitting across tables from men twice my age who smiled while trying to strip me for parts. My first legal advisor drilled one thing into me early. Never assume alignment lasts longer than incentives. That lesson stuck. When Lauren and I got engaged, everyone told me how lucky I was, how brilliant she was, how inspiring it was to see two driven people building something together. And I believed it, I really did. I loved her ambition. I loved that she wanted more than comfort. But love didn't blind me to patterns. I'd already seen how quickly admiration turns into entitlement. How people justify crossing lines once they convince themselves they deserve more. So when we started merging lives, finances, reputations, networks, I did what I always do. I planned. Quietly. The business was growing fast then. We were licensing proprietary security infrastructure to several partner companies. Some in tech, some in creative industries. The IP was clean. The contracts were aggressive. And every one of them ran through a holding entity. Eversight Global. Lauren knew the name. She even joked once that it sounded cold. Good, I said. Cold things don't break under pressure. What she didn't know was that Eversight wasn't just a shell. It was a failsafe. During the pre-wedding legal process, the boring part no one likes to talk about, I added a clause. It was buried deep in a stack of documents no one reads unless they're paid to worry. It tied ethics violations to partnership eligibility. Not morality, ethics. Public conduct that could compromise trust, reputation, or fiduciary alignment. And there was a trigger. If a spouse of an executive or principal license holder was found to be publicly involved with a senior executive of a partner organization, especially in a way that created reputational exposure, control of the associated licenses would revert immediately. No appeals. No delays. I didn't write it out of spite. I wrote it because I'd seen how fast personal matters become corporate disasters. I wrote it because I knew that power without guardrails eventually corrodes the people closest to it. Lauren signed every page, initialed where she was told, smiled through the explanations. She trusted me, or more accurately, she trusted that nothing would ever go wrong. That's the dangerous kind of trust. By the time I walked out of that gala, the plan was already in motion. Not because I triggered it, but because she did. The moment she chose to turn humiliation into humor in a public space tied directly to our professional ecosystem, the clause activated itself. No drama. No alarms. Just process. I didn't have to call anyone. Didn't have to send emails. The system did what it was designed to do. Alerts went out to legal teams. Compliance officers flagged anomalies. Ethics reviews were triggered automatically. Aaron Blake wasn't special. He was just visible. Within 24 hours, internal communications at Halcyon Studio went silent. Meetings were postponed. Press contacts stopped responding. People started asking questions no one wanted to answer on record. 48 hours later, Business West ran a photo from the gala. Lauren, Aaron, his hand on her waist, her hand on his chest. It wasn't scandalous. It didn't need to be. It was enough. The board called an emergency session. Aaron tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. Said it was personal, not professional. Said there was no conflict. But the document was already on the table. Ethics violation. Public conduct. Partner executive. Clause confirmed. Eversight began pulling infrastructure access. Slowly. Precisely. No grand shutdowns. Just enough disruption to make it clear who actually held the keys. Teams lost access. Systems stalled. Confidence cracked. Aaron lost something more important than control. He lost credibility. And the thing about credibility is, once it fractures, everyone pretends they saw it coming. I watched it all from a distance. Not hiding, just no longer participating. Lauren tried to reach me. Emails. Messages through mutual contacts. Voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't respond, because by then, the outcome wasn't emotional. It was mechanical. She thought the danger was in getting caught. She never realized the danger was in being visible. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to win. I just needed the system to do what it was designed to do when someone crossed a line they assumed didn't exist. And the most painful part, the part one don't say out loud, is that I wish she'd never tested it. Because everything that followed wasn't punishment. It was consequence. If there's one thing you learn working in cybersecurity, it's this. Most people don't notice when the damage starts. They only notice when it becomes undeniable. Aaron Blake noticed late. Too late. By the time he realized what had been set in motion, it was already well beyond PR's reach. I didn't have to say a word. The system, my system, had already begged asterisk and the silent unraveling. No noise. No press releases. Just a slow, strategic decoupling that started the moment that photo from the gala hit the business wire. It wasn't even scandalous. The image was clean, almost curated. Lauren in her silver dress, smiling too wide. Aaron with his hand casually on her waist. His body angled like they'd just shared a secret. It wasn't explicit, but in the world of executive optics, suggestion is all it takes. The caption named them both. The article casually linked their respective ventures, then cited the event as an inspiring example of cross-industry collaboration. But context changes everything. Inside Halcyon's boardroom, that photo wasn't inspiring. It was a problem. A very public, very personal problem that opened a legal door they hadn't known existed. Until it was already too late. You could almost hear the pivoting begin. Halcyon's legal team requested a meeting with Eversight to clarify expectations. They wanted to know if we could negotiate around the clause. I didn't reply, because there was nothing to negotiate. The contract was clear. The trigger was public. The mechanism had already begged asterisk N. Aaron still didn't understand, not really. He thought this was about optics. Thought if he could get ahead of the narrative, he could contain the fallout. So he went on the offensive. Internal memos went out saying the photo had been misinterpreted, that there was no inappropriate conduct, that he remained fully committed to Halcyon's partnerships and values. Classic PR speak. Cold, polished, meaningless. But the silence that followed those memos? That was real. Eversight's security node stopped responding to Halcyon's authentication calls. Not an error, a quiet, deliberate rejection. Their lead designer couldn't access the toolchain. Their versioning server went dark. Their dev environment refused login credentials. And suddenly, the collaboration that Aaron had publicly celebrated started to feel like a breach. I know this because one of Halcyon's team leads, a guy named Min, emailed me privately. Subject line, "Is this a total pullout?" He didn't defend Aaron. Didn't ask for reconsideration. He just wanted to know how long he had to migrate his files before everything went cold. I didn't respond to him either, but I read it twice, because that's when I knew Aaron wasn't just exposed. He was isolated. The PR team stopped releasing statements after day 3. Why? Because there was no message that could change the terms. No spin that could undo the legal fact. Halcyon had violated a clause they never thought would apply to them, because they never imagined Lauren would be the one who pulled the pin. And Aaron? He flailed. I watched from a quiet distance as he tried to rally support. He made calls to other partners, ones who still had their licenses intact. Claimed I was overreacting. Suggested we were going through a divorce, and that this was just personal baggage, spilling into business. But no one backed him, because they knew me, because they'd seen how I operate, because I never mix business with emotion, unless it's strategic. More importantly, they didn't want to risk their own contracts. One executive texted me privately, "I'll stay out of it, but let me know if we need to distance. I'm with you." That was the final crack. After that, Aaron went silent. Not just publicly, internally. He stopped responding to his own team's Slack messages, canceled standing meetings, delegated everything. And that's when the resignation rumors started. Some said he was stepping back. Others said he was taking personal time. But everyone knew what was coming. By week's end, Halcyon's homepage had quietly shifted. Aaron's name was no longer listed under leadership. No announcement, no farewell post, just gone. Lauren must have seen it too, because that same day she tried again. A new number, a voice message this time. I didn't play it. Just let the transcription fill the screen. "Graham, I know you're angry, but please don't let this be how we end. I never meant to. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't think it would." Cut off. She didn't finish. Maybe she realized she had nothing to say that would matter. Maybe she knew the damage wasn't just done. It was complete. Because when Aaron fell, it wasn't with a bang. It was with a pause. A vacuum. A slow, quiet exodus of influence that no one could trace to one decision, but everyone understood. And I didn't have to lift a finger. Because that's the thing about systems designed to protect. When they're built right, you don't have to fight. You just have to wait. Catherine and I didn't plan to make a statement. We didn't need to. We walked into the gallery together. Not arm in arm, just side by side. She wore a steel gray dress, no ring, head high. I hadn't seen her since the fallout, but when I reached out, she didn't hesitate. Inside, the room quieted. Lauren stood at the bar, frozen mid-sip. Aaron wasn't there. His name had vanished from the program. People watched us, whispering. Some out of curiosity, some out of fear they might be next. When Aaron's former boss approached, I handed him a folder. Nothing dramatic. Just documentation. Just fact. Catherine glanced at Lauren once, then said to no one in particular, "When someone shows you who they are, stop pretending you didn't see it." That was it. We didn't stay long. We didn't need to. The silence we left behind was enough. A week later, Lauren sent a letter. No apology. No explanation. Just exhaustion. She wrote that she was tired of performing, that she missed being seen, that I had been too good. She still didn't get it. It was never about being good. It was about being present, about choosing us. She hadn't. I didn't write back. Instead, I opened the archive, a folder labeled Auto Reserve. Inside were recordings, voicemails, fragments she never knew I'd kept. One stuck out, her voice, laughing. "He won't leave. He's too decent." She thought decency meant passivity. She mistook patience for permission. But I left, not out of spite, not even out of hurt. I left because she stopped treating love like something sacred. And I finally started treating myself like something worth protecting.